type B buffer around the Stewart Cemetery. The town of Apex will provide water, sewer, and electric service and will be designed according to the Apex standards. A full list of the architectural conditions can be found on pages 3 and 4 of the staff report. The applicant has proposed all buildings shall provide solar conduit for the installation of rooftop solar panels. The developer shall apply for Energy Star or other energy efficiency rating for all newly constructed homes on the property. And these are the single family, and these are the proposed townhouse elevations. The existing Walden Road right-of-way shall be abandoned, and a new residential street network will be created. And they are proposing a street to access right here across from the Madison subdivision. Sidewalks shall be provided on all internal streets. There is also a condition that the north and east legs of the Hume Olive Road and Evans Road intersection shall provide pedestrian accommodations, including push buttons and crosswalk indicators. A letter of impact from Wake County School System was received for this rezoning, and it is included in the staff report. The school system indicates that elementary, middle, and high school within the current assignment area for this rezoning is anticipated to have insufficient capacity for future students. Transportation to schools outside the current assignment area should be anticipated. The Apex Environmental Advisory Board held a pre-application meeting for this rezoning on April 15th. The zoning conditions suggested by the EIB are listed on page 6 of the staff report, along with the applicant's response to each condition. The Parks and Rec and Cultural Advisory Commission reviewed this project on June 30th and unanimously recommended fee in lieu with credit for construction of Greenway Trail if an opportunity is identified at the time of master subdivision plan review and approval. Planning staff can recommend approval of the rezoning with the conditions as proposed by the applicant. Staff also did receive 3 public comments, and a packet of those comments should be placed at each of your seats so that you have those. The applicant is also here to present.
Okay. Just I have one question. The type A or the 10-foot type B around the cemetery, is staff okay with that since it's on an interior part of the property, or is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, with it being an older cemetery, I know they tried to, they can probably speak to this, but they tried or explored the opportunity of trying to include that into their project, but they can probably speak more to that as well.
Hey, anybody have any questions for Liz before we hear from the applicant? All right. The applicant would like to make a statement.
Thank you, Ms. Lofton, for your presentation. Good evening, Chair Marks, Vice Chair Skinner, and members of the Planning Board. My name is Neil Ghosh. I'm an attorney with the Morningstar Law Group at 112 West Main Street in Durham, and I'm representing the applicant, which is Beazer Homes, for this rezoning request. So I think you all know with any new infill development, there will be some concerns from area residents. But I do think that everyone recognizes that these parcels should be developed residentially. We've done some outreach with neighbors, and we've heard some concerns primarily about density and traffic. I think it's important to keep in mind that the proposed project is consistent with the town's long-range plans for the area, which include both the density and also having a mix of housing types in this area. Some of you may remember that some time ago there was a proposal for a daycare on property at the intersection of Evans and Walden Road. That project was opposed by the surrounding communities, both Bella Casa and Madison, who instead urged that this area be developed for residential. Luckily, the plan for you tonight is a residential development that is proposed on the property. This project is a larger undertaking than I think initially comes to mind, and that's because it includes a lot of infrastructure. There are existing road stubs on the east, the west, and the north sides of the assemblage that we will be required to connect to as part of the project. Our main point of access is planned along Evans Road, directly opposite Madison Creek Drive. A road will run from that point east through the project and ultimately will connect to existing Vitrina Way. We are seeking to abandon the portion of Walden Road on the project site, and instead we will build a Town of Apex Road that will run north-south through the project, as opposed to that angle that Walden currently runs. And ultimately, I think that this is going to provide greater connectivity for the folks that live in this area. The project also commits to infrastructure external to the site as well. In addition to widening across the site's road frontages, this project will construct a portion of a median on Hume Olive, and that's because that access point on Hume Olive is a right-in, right-out only. Sidewalks will be provided on both sides of all internal streets, and this project will provide pedestrian accommodations at the intersection of Hume Olive and Evans Road, which ultimately will make this safer for everyone. As you know, that's where the schools are, so I think it's going to be important to upgrade the pedestrian accommodations there. Based on the advice and guidance of the Environmental Advisory Board, the project has incorporated several environmental features. In fact, I believe we incorporated every suggestion from the EAB. This includes designing for the 25-year storm in our SEMs, making sure our SEMs are not located within riparian buffers to the extent possible, putting educational signage near environmentally sensitive areas, using native plant species, incorporating pet waste stations throughout the community, having solar conduit in all of the buildings, and applying for energy efficiency ratings for newly constructed homes. This project also includes potentially development of a portion of a planned public greenway. So in my mind, there's a little bit here for everyone to support. There's a big investment in infrastructure, innovative environmental commitments, a mix of housing types, upgraded stormwater controls, all of that. So we look forward to getting feedback from you and hope to have your support tonight. We do have our team available to answer any questions you may have, and I thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Gross. Any questions for, any questions? Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Gross. At this time, I will open up for public comment on this case. Anybody, you may come forward, just state your name and address, and
Good afternoon. Thank you for your time. Thanks for the opportunity to connect with you on these important issues that impact our town. My name is Brian Feekers. I'm a resident of Bella Casa, and I'm asking you to vote no on the rezoning application by the applicant. We found out about this potential project in April, and since that time have communicated with a number of our neighbors and learned about a variety of different concerns that they anticipated throughout the project. Knowing that anecdotal feedback was probably not going to be sufficient to sway the opinion of the team here, I put together a quantitative study to discuss what concerns, if any, faced our community. And what I found was that all but one of the 132 people that participated in the survey indicated that they had a concern about this proposed development. And moreover, 70% of the participants indicated multiple concerns. As you heard from some other previous presenters, the education was a primary concern, and it also seems to be an issue that Wake County Public School Systems has brought up. I think the biggest issue related to that are those new residents of our community. When you look at a home for sale, the MLS indicates what school your child is designated to go to. But Olive Chapel is over capacity, as is what's the other school? I'm blanking on it. Scotts Ridge. And so it's obviously troublesome for a new resident to learn that that sense of community that they're looking for is not something that they can accomplish because those kids aren't going to school together. Beyond that, traffic was also brought up as a primary issue. You know, what I've understood from the plan is that they're going to put a shoulder on Hume Olive, and that's going to negate some of the negative traffic implications. I don't think that that is sufficient. I propose to you that there's a much broader initiative that's required to suit 115 new homes coming in addition to the other developments that are going in around Bella Casa. The third primary issue was deforestation. So whether you look northwest, south, or east from Bella Casa, what you find is that there's clear cutting everywhere. There's new homes going up. And I recognize that there's a need for that. Our community is growing, rightfully so. A lot of people are trying to move here to achieve the goals that they have for their family. But what I would say is that our town needs a little bit of time to catch up. We're hearing that from not only the residents of Bella Casa, but also, it sounds like, from Wake County Public Schools. So I appreciate your time, and I ask for your vote no on the rezoning.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mitzi Hole. I live at 2811 Walden Road. Our property is the proposed sewage right-of-way. We are not in the development. We are bordering this part here on Walden Road. I don't know how to use that anyway. So we are opposed to the rezoning because the town, obviously, planning department has not, with their land use, figured out how to put in a pump station for this amount of residential property, and instead would rather come through personal people's property for the sewage right-of-way. We were told by an engineer that the town would not want to put in a pump station because it's too expensive. They would rather condemn private property. We were told this when Bella Casa went in by a member of the planning development town employee. My husband and I, we've lived on this land since 1986. We see ourselves as stewards of the land. We have tried to do right by the land. We've planted things that attract birds and pollinators. I'm a horticulturalist by career and education, so I've planted a lot of rare and unusual trees on our property. We like to keep this place as our sanctuary. We may not be able to save the world, but we hope that we could save our 10 acres of land and keep it from further devastation by a 30-foot wide and probably over 1,500-foot swath through our property for the sewage right-of-way. I appreciate your time and for letting me get this off my chest. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall.
Thank you. So,
hello all, I'm Donnie Clark. I live at 7608 Hume Olive Road. I joined this property on the southeast side. And I don't know any way to see it, but I'm totally against the rezoning. First of all, look around out there, and it's nothing in the area comparable to what we're trying to do. The density is just way overwhelming, and I don't think it can support the floodshed that we have coming through that property. The back of my property stays wet all the time and runs right through this property. 6 units per acre is just entirely, in my opinion, too much density. Again, look around, there's nothing out on that order. I would even like to know the percentage of the impervious soil that these units are going to cover. It just seems impossible to me for it to bear the runoff that's coming through. The environmental impact has a great importance to me. We are not considering, in my opinion, today, We're only considering the day and not the future. This is one of the places where you could go out and see wildlife of any sort. And what are we doing to them? We're running them away. We're just taking their life away. It's great for my kids or grandkids to come out and say, hey, there's a rabbit, there's a squirrel. But the way we're going, it's not going to be that anymore. Also, the traffic impact. Now, I've been on the property for 70 years. I thought I was moving out in the country and really enjoyed it out. Traffic was there, but nothing like it is now. And I guess my quality of living is really going down because of that. All the traffic, trees being cut, no wildlife, and trash. We used to have a beautiful place in the town of Apex. Now look anywhere you want to on the sides of the road and look at the trash. It's just not the same as it used to be, and of course I'm prejudiced. I like the way it was before. But when it affects everybody's quality of living, guys, something's got to be done. I mean, thought we were moving in the country, and now we're in a concrete jungle, to be honest with you. We have a school. Where's the safety for the kids with all this new traffic we're creating? I don't think anybody can like the traffic and the environment that we're fixing to put together out there. And once it's done, it's too late. There's no calling it back. So, again, I would like for everybody to reconsider this, and I'm not opposed to growth in the right way. But I think the townhomes and the 6 units per acre is just overwhelming. And I appreciate everybody's time.
Thank you, Mr. Clark.
Mr. Clark?
Anyone else wish to make a comment?
Afternoon, everybody. John Ellman, 2422 Vitrina Way. And I'm asking you to vote no for this proposal for a lot of the reasons my neighbors have brought up. I'm not against advancement. I know we need more housing, but like the last gentleman said, we need to do it in a responsible manner where we can take into consideration the wildlife, the density, the deforestation, the traffic. Some of these things are out of your control because that's Wake County, but I agree with my neighbor Brian Fikers in that if you were to move into that neighborhood and not be able to go to that school, that's disappointing to say the least. So I think there's bigger things to consider. We need to do this the right way, so I'm asking you to vote no. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ellman.
Any other comments? And those the only comments were the ones that were given here. Okay. All right. Thank you. At this time, I'll close the public comment and bring it back to the board for discussion and possible motion.
Did we ever get your questions answered in regards to the cemetery?
Yeah, I think it's, maybe Mr. Ghosh can, since it's only a 10-foot buffer and it's internal, is that why you don't need a 20-foot buffer?
Surrounding the cemetery?
Because the UDO requires a 20-foot and you're only proposing a 10-foot.
Right, so with the zoning we're requiring, that is a modification to what normally would be required here. As you said, the cemetery is internal to the site. It's going to be surrounded entirely by this community, and I believe either there is existing or we are agreeing to put a fence around the cemetery, and we've been in contact with some of the, I guess, ancestors of those who remain there. Okay. So it is a reduced buffer, but with with agreement or discussions with the family there.
Okay.
Then question on the sewer easement, where do you plan to attach the sewer from? On the,
So the Stallings property, let me see if we can. I don't see my mouse.
It's there.
All right, yeah, this is the Stallings property here. And so,
Wait, we're seeing the land use map from. the
Right.
past.
well, he's showing the.
Oh, okay, I got it, I got
and
it.
this is the Stallings property here,
Okay.
correct? Yeah. So if I'm moving the mouse on it right there, if you can see it. Yeah, it's kind of north and east. And we have been speaking with the Stallings about acquiring a sewer easement through there, and that hasn't been determined yet, but that is one planned area for sewer to come through. I see my colleague Jeff has joined me. I don't know if you want to add to that.
Chair Marks, members of the planning board, Jeff Roach, Peak Engineering and Design. We're the Peak Engineering is the civil engineers working with Mr. Ghosh and Beazer on the project. That's correct. There's an existing sewer line there to the north of the Stallings property that was put in when Bella Casa was built, approximately in this area right here. It's a natural. This is the Stallings piece right here. This is a natural draw for about 100 acres coming, in this case, heading north up to, I think it's Termini Drive is the crossing up here where the existing sanitary sewer is. So the property owner is correct that, the area is not big enough for a regional pump station, so it's too small for the town really to support a public pump station at that location. We've asked the questions. So the long-term goal is gravity sewer going north up into Bella Casa, where it's set up to continue north through, larger outfall interceptor lines. So that is the proposed routing.
What happens if you can't get a sewer easement there?
We'll continue to work with them all the way through. If it gets to a point where we can't, then we'll go back to the town and basically tell them that, negotiations are done. We can't, we need a pump station. How do we service this upper? It's a pretty large basin, about 100 acres, like I said. So it makes sense to do a gravity sewer line, and that's why we continue to work with, or Beazer has continued to work with the property owners downstream. And we'll continue to work with them.
Okay.
So we're doing different layouts and trying to accommodate avoiding that existing large vegetation that's in the area, while also trying to avoid the stream buffers that are there as well. So juggling a lot of balls at the moment with that one. Does that answer your question about sewer routing?
Yeah, I guess it seems like there's not an alternative, so it's kind of, if it doesn't work out, then you got to go back to the town, and who pays for the pump station if you got to do a pump station?
Well, it's all private. It's privately funded. Assuming a pump station would, if it could get approved, somewhere down at the low point, it would be up to the development to fund it and install it. I will say there is a sewer easement here along the current end of the asphalt on Walden Road, but that's way too high. You can see the lines here. This is as you kind of fall off the slope. It slopes down towards that routing for sewer. We could get a little bit of the property up in this area here, and trying to work with the 21 neighbors to put the assembly together, to provide them, that they're all looking to sell at this point. So trying to get sewer there is a reasonable small area, but this is the main line that will serve not only this property but others to the south.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Roach.
Thank you.
Mr. Roach, if you were able to run sewer, and were able to reach some form of an agreement with Ms. Hull and her family, would it be on the east or the west side of that 100-foot perennial stream buffer?
We're proposing on the west side because this is their existing home here that was left in place when Bella Casa was built. So we have proposed it on the west side. We're currently in the process right now of surveying the creek and existing large trees in that area to see how we can meander that sanitary sewer through there with a minimal impact to the property owners. So, west side.
Thank you.
Neil, you said in your intro that the main entrance was going to be on Evans, but at the neighborhood meetings, we said the main entrance was going to be on Hemi Olive. Has that changed?
Yeah, so, well, I should say that Hemi Olive is only going to be able to support a right-in, right-out, and therefore won't be a main entrance. This would be, where am I at? This would be the full motion movement here, across from
Madison Creek.
Yep.
So,
And so that'll likely.
so in
be
the traffic study, did the traffic study take that into account? Because in the
Yes.
traffic study, it said only 10% of the traffic was going to go north on Evans, 10% south, and that doesn't, To me, that doesn't sound like a logical main entrance, but maybe you're making a distinction because of the lack of full access?
So I am making a distinction because of lack of full access. I mean, you can only enter the community at this point if you're headed this way on Hume Olive.
Yeah,
And so, I mean, I wouldn't call that the main entrance either.
Okay.
Yeah. But, you know, the project will have good connectivity throughout, and so there isn't, you know, it's got access points in every cardinal direction. I guess it's the point that you get a nice spread.
Mr. Steele, can I jump in real quick?
Sure.
The traffic study, and I stole it from Russell Dalton, he had it with him, thank goodness. It actually shows, 70% of quite a bit of the traffic is actually going out the main entrance here. I think we showed 10% of the site coming out onto Hume Olive to try to avoid the school backups that occur every morning at 7:30, 8 o'clock, and then again in the afternoon. So we actually, Ramey Kemp and Associates did the traffic study and proposed most of the primary entrance would be out to Evans Road.
Got it.
Because it's far enough away from that intersection to avoid conflicts with right and left turn lanes.
Okay.
Also, I did want to just point out, I think I saw it in the staff report, and I know someone else mentioned it. The density here is, I mean, we're talking about 34-ish acres and 115 units, so we're 3.4, not six dwelling units the acre across the whole assemblage. Just want to make sure everyone was aware of that.
I want to jump back to the sewer. So right now, the current plan is annexation of private property for private development.
It would be to route the
expand on
sewer.
that?
Hold on. It would be to route the sewer. This is the current plan, is to route the sewer this way, but this property would not be, like the Stallings parcel would not be annexed.
Is there a current sewer easement up through this property now?
No.
So we're adding a sewer easement through somebody's private property.
Well, we are in negotiations and conversations with Stallings to acquire that, yes.
Okay, and if they say no, what happens to the project?
And that's what Jeff was answering earlier.
Like,
The
we
price
just had,
can-
we had an issue like this that went legal, right? Didn't it go to the North Carolina Supreme Court?
Correct, and Mr. Roy, our goal was never to get there, and we don't ever want to go there again. So this is a thing between Bees and the private property owners. We don't ever want to get there. I think our fallback would be go back to a pump station before you go to anything beyond that. So this developer has agreed to basically for 155 lots, if the town would approve a pump station, if it's a requirement that we build a pump station, then they build a pump station. So that's, we think the better, as an engineer, it's always better to do gravity sewer. You know, anybody that's in our business will say, gravity sewer, very easy. You don't get calls when the power goes out. You don't get calls when there's a clog. You know, it basically resolves itself. Whereas a pump station, you've got annual maintenance that's, you know, tens of thousands of dollars a year. So we want to work out, and Beezer has been very diligent with the property owners to try to work out a off-site sewer easement, and we will continue down that path. Because the rezoning just gives us the ability for the development. It doesn't say that these people have to sell their land for an easement. And they won't be annexed. They will have the ability to be and to connect the sewer, but it's not a requirement for them to connect to it.
Okay.
Okay?
Got a quick question. Does this, whether either septic, either way you go, will the sewer potentially serve other properties to the south in the future, whether it be the pump station or the gravity dead? Is it set up or is it going to?
It will. It will.
Lack of a better word, dead end.
Yeah, the town ordinance requires us to extend sewer to upstream properties. In this case, the gravity sewer comes through the Stallings piece to here, and then it splits. There's two creeks. One goes, matter of fact, you can see it here, how it splits on the property. One of the requirements is that we will come from the north heading to the property at this point. Once it gets here, we will split to the west to get to this portion of the property and serve here. It'll also split off to the southeast to provide, you know, for the Elizabeth Clark pieces here, the NDJ Ventures, and it can serve all the way up to Old US 1, across from Vicious Fishers on Old US 1 as well. So that's what I was saying. It's about a 100-acre drainage area that theoretically could be served by that gravity sewer line if those property owners decided to develop in the future. setting up for long-term success is really what it is. Does that answer your?
It did.
Okay.
Any other questions, discussion, possible motion?
Is the town opposed to, putting in a pump station and just that being the plan now? Is that normally?
I'm not going to speak for the town, but I will tell you that every time I ask about a pump station, the first answer is no, and then I work my way back from there. So, is that a legitimate? And I know I'm asking planning, but generally our goal is to stay away from pump stations unless they're large regional stations that serve hundreds of acres. The smaller ones are only used when there's no other way to get them.
Any discussion?
I'll go first, Chairman. There's a lot of good here, but there's also a lot of tough things. I'm going to start with the bad, school capacity. I don't want to make a vote as a planning board member based on school capacity. That's something we can't control. And, you know, it's like anything. Commercial follows residential. Schools follow the rooftops. I don't think people proactively build schools in anticipation. It's just not the way the world works. Similarly, they don't proactively build commercial until the rooftop's there to support it. So I'm not going to make a vote based on school capacity. I think Wake County knows we have an issue, and we saw last month in one of the cases where the developer actually went out and helped acquire the school, and the school has now got a piece of land under contract in this vicinity. So I think that actually could be something that we could agree to. The neighbors, they fall into two sects, in my opinion. You've got the indigenous folks, so to speak, the original landowners, the county subdivision folks, and then you've got the new Bellicasians that have moved in. And so I hear their issues are more of your typical NIMBY type, like, I don't want this here because I moved here and I want to close the door behind me. And I can't support that, but I can support the people that have lived here for 70 years thinking, you know, their world's changed. And I live in a Wake County old development built in the 70s on 7 acres, so I understand that completely. But thank God that people that have big tracts are selling, because then more people have an opportunity to move to the town of Apex, and that's why we're a great place. So I understand Ms. Hull's concern about a sewer, but hopefully the developer can come to an agreement. They're going to basically build free sewer and increase their property value and hopefully not damage too much of the property. If an agreement could happen, I'd hope that it could, but if not, hopefully there's a sewer option. Now, the good, they're going to get Evans Road expanded to half of the ultimate sectional on the frontage. That's a lot of frontage, and Evans Road is needing it in that area. Looking at the layout on page 205 of our report here, I think it fits quite contextually well within the overall development of this area, and knowing what's going on with Vicious Fishes and all they've got planned, I think that this is pretty in keeping with the area. They're going to be donating $345,000 to our parks. That's going to put us on the map. I think that's very admirable. The town hall, or the townhome, I saw good fenestration on the end units, which is a big, I can't stand seeing a big wall of like siding without windows, and I think the planning department did a good job there. So I think this is good. They're following the 2045 land use map, which is actually on the low side, and they're providing good east-west connection and good EMS response times. It's something that we can support. So for all these reasons, I'm supporting this. I think that it's a good project for the town.
Okay.
Can I go next?
I'm sorry?
Can I go next?
Yeah, sure.
So I'm a neighbor of this. I live in Madison Creek, and I was actually the one who argued against the daycare in front of this board before I joined the board. So I have paid attention to this area really closely for the last several years. And I'm in favor of this development primarily because I've looked at it in real detail. And the residents of my HOA, which I'll talk about first, we're mostly newer. The development was started 6 years ago, so we are not legacy historic residents of Friendship, but I'll talk about them next. So those of us that are in Madison, it's actually, as opposed to what Mr. Clark said, it's actually very similar in size to the single-family houses that will be along Evans. What's, I think, different is the townhomes. On the other hand, I don't think people would want to build single-family homes at the light at the middle school. So I think townhomes there is actually a really good solution versus maybe a 7-Eleven or a gas station. So my neighborhood is very supportive of this because they think it will, as you just said, will blend in nicely from Madison Creek across. It'll also blend in my opinion, over to Bella Casa. And then I took the time to talk to, and it sounds like there's no one else from the neighborhood that's going to talk tonight. So I talked to one of the longest residents of the Evans side and part of the Evans family. And he told me that the family was supportive, and many of them are participating, so of course they're going to benefit financially. But then even those that aren't participating are supportive because they think it will help raise their property values. So the historic friendship neighbors of ours have told us that they support this. So, and I know that does include some of you, but for the majority of the ones that we know that are adjacent to this property on the Evans side are in support of it. So I was a little thrown for a loop with the traffic study because I'm looking at page 12, Jeff. Page 12 in the staff report still says that 70% of the traffic is going to go out Hume Olive. So I don't know if that was a mistake or whether something changed. It says on page 12, trip distribution 70% to and from the east via Hume Olive Road. So if that changed.
And that may be coming from, as a right in, right out.
Yeah.
They're going to come off of Old US 1 up Hume Olive, and a lot of people are going to cut into that right in, right out.
Yeah.
So when I think of primary entrance, I look at the full access movement being the primary, and that's the Evans Road access.
Yeah.
I see that picking up most of that. The cars that are coming from Apex up Hume Olive are going to mostly turn in that port. Mr. Steele, I apologize for that.
That's okay. All right.
Russ and I looked at it, or you showed me, and I may have picked the wrong one.
All right. So I mean, yeah. I mean, and
Russell,
again,
Russell,
yeah, go ahead, Russell.
Go ahead, Russell.
Yeah, it's confusing because of the limitation for right in, right out on Hume Olive Road. It's correct, 70% are going out that way, but to get out that way, they're coming out the main driveway and taking a left and going down to the light to take a left because they can't take a left down there.
I got it.
Now, in the future, as development occurs to the east along Hume Olive Road, there will be assumedly be other local connections, so that traffic may have other ways out.
Right.
But as far as the traffic goes, 90% of the traffic is coming out of the main entrance and 50% of the traffic's going in on Evans Road. So.
But yet we still scored it an A or a B. So to me, that if I look at the traffic study, an A or a B to me is for these days is pretty good.
Yeah, there's no reduction in level of service with the site traffic added based on the study. Yeah.
So I'm going to vote in favor of it. For all the reasons you just talked about.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Any comments, Keith, Tim? Or a possible motion?
I think, there's a lot to agree with and there's some to disagree with. I think for me, where I'm stuck at is still on the sewer. I know it's a rezoning, but what it's doing is forcing the hand of another private property person who, is going to have to, at some point for this project to have legs, to give up something of theirs. Whether it adds value, some people would say it adds value. If it doesn't ever sell because they don't want to sell, it adds no value. Mm-hmm. So to me, I think what we're doing is we're taking a project that wouldn't have legs on its own and trying to force another private property to give it the legs that it needs, whether it be through a gravity fed or through a pump station. It's not a viable project if you couldn't get sewer through that area. If that area was a lake, it's dead. So for me, in that point alone, I couldn't support it myself.
Even though the pump station would not affect the Stallings property at all?
Well, you still have to go through that property.
No, you don't. Not for the pump station. That's very important.
Splits.
The pump station would be their second choice, but it would not affect the Stallings property at all, correct?
Correct. Yeah, that's Plan B. Yeah, the pump station in this case would probably pump back up to Walden Road and would leave the Stallings property alone. It would have, my guess, and I'll just say it from a quick engineering, a pump station would want to be stationed somewhere down this location here. Can you see that on Mr.
Okay.
Rowe? And then what would happen is there would be a force main that would come back up, probably up here to an existing manhole that's in Walden Road. So yeah, if we didn't, there are no easements, no agreement could be acquired, and the town said, yes, you can build a pump station at that location, that's where the force main would be routed to, not through their property. Okay?
Understand.
Because if we're getting the easement from, we'd rather put the gravity. Like we said, it's a
Right.
lot easier, no maintenance, or much less maintenance.
Okay.
So I actually think it puts the Stallings in the driver's seat, because now they can ask a pretty penny for that easement, because they know that it's either their easement or a pump station. And I mean, if I were a property owner, I'd say, okay, this is my meal ticket here. And I know they don't want to sell and they don't want to move, and I respect that. But maybe this is some cash in hand that could be useful. But on the other hand, I just wanted to make sure that you understood that they're not going to force it on them. And I do have the third option, which they didn't talk about. If the town were to tell Beazer, no, you can't have a pump station, and yet they couldn't come to agreement, I don't know what happens in the third option. Can anybody tell me?
Doesn't sound like.
I don't know, but as somebody, I have strong land right advocacy in my blood, and I think that somebody else to hold the land rights of the Evans family hostage for that, I'd have a real problem with that, because you're following the land use plan that the town of Apex adopted, and you want to sell your property, but you
Town of
can't.
Apex doesn't get to dictate what other people do as private citizens of this town. They don't get to, sorry.
Could the town of
Doesn't work that
Apex,
way.
in the third option, could they force something on the Stallings?
Well,
I don't think, given the case law that we just saw, I don't think you can do that.
All right, okay, so there is no third case.
Right, it's either, it's, at this point, until there's an agreement, it's either a pump station or it doesn't work.
Right.
Right?
Well,
I mean,
or the
in
Stallings.
reality, if
They make
it's
an
a
offer,
hard
the
no.
Stallings can't refuse.
Right, well, some people, money, you can't.
I know.
Money can't always buy what you.
I know that.
What you're giving up.
Yep.
It's a lifestyle for them.
Yeah.
Well, I think, so do we have a motion from Mark, Ryan?
I'll make a motion to approve the CZ, 21 CZ 13 as presented.
Okay, I have a motion from Mark. Do I have any other comments? Or second?
I'll second.
I have a second from Ryan, so
I've got a question for you before we vote on that. Is there a way of putting in a condition that, the only way that we would approve would be, I think as a board, we could all agree, at this point, we would only agree as if there is a pump station.
I don't know why.
No, I don't want to do that, because I don't know what the owners of Stallings want to do. They have their choice.
Stallings may say, give me, some exorbitant amount of money, and the builder says, sure. And then,
I don't want to, I just don't want to put that in.
I understand.
I mean, my concern was also on the sewer, because I don't, I don't want somebody to say, you've got to give me an easement to put this sewer in there. That's why I asked Mr. Roach for the options, and there is an option. And if, the pump station is not an option, then they have no project really at this point. So yeah, I mean, I appreciate your concern for the property owners, but I don't want to speak for them, because they may have options that they want to pursue.
You're in the driver's seat. Well, I'm just
No,
saying,
we've closed the public comment.
just letting you know, you were in the driver's seat, and make sure to
Giving you the reins.
But we do appreciate your comments, but no.
Thank you.
All right, with that, so we have a motion from Mark and a second from Ryan. Any other comments? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody. All right, Liz is also presenting public hearing and possible motion regarding rezoning case 21 CZ 15, the Chapel Ridge Towns PUD. That's fine, yep. Wait till the doors close. Okay, Liz, go ahead.
Chapel Ridge, 21 CZ 15 It is on the east side of 540. The properties are located on the north side of Olive Chapel Road, and Olive Chapel Professional Park and 540 Flex are to the west. The properties are currently zoned rural residential. The applicant is proposing to rezone the property to plain unit development conditional zoning. The 2045 land use map designates the properties as medium density residential. The site consists of 5 parcels on the north side, totaling 21.6 acres. And there is a gas easement that bisects the property. The applicant conducted a neighborhood meeting on March 29th, and the neighborhood meeting is included in the staff report. A full list of the approved uses is on page 2 of the staff report and includes single-family, accessory apartment, and townhouse. A full list of the proposed setbacks are on page 2 and 3 of the staff report. The proposed PUD shall meet the RCA requirements in the UDO. The applicant is proposing a 30-foot type B buffer along Olive Chapel Road, a 20-foot type B buffer along the east and along Chapel Ridge Road, and a 20-foot type A buffer along the north. The town of Apex will provide water and sewer. This is the utility. A full list of the architectural conditions can be found on page 3 of the staff report. They are proposing access points to Chapel Ridge Road, to Olive Chapel Road, and to the north or northeast. The development will plan sidewalk infrastructure along Olive Chapel Road and Chapel Ridge Road and provide sidewalk to the internal street network. A letter of impact from Wake County Public School System was received for this rezoning and is included in the staff report packet. The school system indicates that elementary and high school within the current assignment area for this rezoning is anticipated to have insufficient capacity for future students. Transportation to schools outside the current assignment area should be anticipated. And the Environmental Advisory Board held a meeting with the applicant on February 18th. The zoning conditions suggested by the EAB are listed on page 6 of the staff report, along with the applicant's response to each condition. The Parks and Rec Advisory Commission reviewed this item at their May 26th meeting and unanimously recommended a fee in lieu for the project. A fee rate shall be set at the time of town council approval. Planning staff can recommend approval with the conditions as proposed by the applicant. The applicant is also here, and I did not receive any public comments for this one.
Thank you, Liz.
I know the neighbors are also here. So.
Does anybody have any questions for Liz at this time? Okay, thank you, Liz. Would the applicant like to make a statement?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Board. Jason Barron with Morningstar Law Group here on behalf of the applicant in this case. Joining me tonight are Jeff Westmoreland with Toll Brothers. Toll is the anticipated builder for the site. Also here are Brandy Vega and Ben Mayo of Withers Ravidel. They provided the land planning and engineering for this development. I think the staff report, along with Liz's presentation, kind of captures the essence of what the request is here. Just want to highlight from a development density standpoint, this is kind of one of those right use, right locations. It's appropriately conditioned. It meets the medium density residential that the town has been planning for in this area. As was noted, the Environmental Advisory Board's recommendations are included in the case. We've got architectural commitments that exceed the ordinance. Perimeter buffers either meet or exceed all of the ordinance standards, including providing what we believe is going to be a pretty critical streetscape along Olive Chapel. And one of things that we've come to learn through the number of meetings that we've had and discussions that we have with folks who live in this area is the streetscape on the west side of the property is a source of consternation for the folks that live back there. As you might be familiar, that's where those offices are located. They're being built out in phases, and so instead of having kind of a uniform streetscape established in that area, it's kind of a hodgepodge. And we agree with their perspective associated with that not being the most attractive option, at least until it's completed. And so what we have been doing is really studying up and making sure that when this development comes forward, that those folks won't experience the same thing again. And so the good news is this is going to be essentially a single-phase residential development, so the entire frontage of Olive Chapel Road and Chapel Ridge specifically, that entire frontage will be built out at the beginning of the project. And so that streetscape that we've offered as a condition of the case will be included really out of the gate. We've been working closely with the neighbors, answering questions that they've had related to the development. And more than anything, I love working on cases like this because it's Toll Brothers. That, you know, conditions can say one thing, but at the end of the day, Toll has a well-earned reputation for excellence in the residential building market, and this will be no exception. You know, I like working on cases like, you know, with Toll because I know that when I stand up in front of folks like you all and make a presentation on their behalf, that they're going to follow through on their commitments, that what they're going to deliver is going to be a really high-quality development. And so really with that, we're here to answer any questions that you all have, but we have we believe, like I said, that this is kind of the right use and the right location. Would appreciate you all support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barrows. So I do have a couple. There was some concern about the pond on the northern part of the property and what the plan is for that, whether there is fencing, because you just, you know, if you got a bunch of kids, they're going to go, you know, a fence right on the pond wouldn't do anything. They would just go around. So,
and we have been in multiple meetings with the folks who own the rest of the pond, essentially, and we are working out essentially an arrangement with them whereby we're either going to deed the property to them, just outright, or we've essentially come up with a landscaping plan. We've shared it with them that will create essentially a natural reason to not access that portion of the site. The topography, as you can imagine, drops off in that area, so there's going to be a retaining wall kind of in this location here, and then behind that retaining wall, what is being offered is essentially a lot of native species to, you know, create less incentive for folks from the neighborhood to access the pond. So we've been in an active conversation with the folks who own the rest of the pond. That's an ongoing conversation that we feel like has gone really well.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Mr. Barrows? Okay.
I'm not going anywhere.
Okay, thank you. All right, at this time I'll open up for public comment. Anybody wishing to speak on this case, please come forward.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Bria. I live at 1516 Clark Farm Road in the Chapel Ridge subdivision, and I'm reading this today for Rita Boykin, who lives on Clark Farm Road, also in the Chapel Ridge neighborhood, because she's not feeling well. Toll Brothers is requesting rezoning of 21.6 acres of land to the planned unit development conditional zoning. They wish to develop on land which now consists of 5 single homes, excuse me, on 21 plus acres to a development of 116 townhomes. I not only consider this more than slightly higher density, but a substantial detriment to adjacent properties. I would much prefer that any future development of that acreage be to single-family homes. Today, I will not get into all the issues we have had previous and continuing development surrounding our neighborhood. I will say it has looked like a bomb went off for the last 4 years of an unfinished office park. Broken, fallen down fencing, overgrown grass, road issues, leftover construction equipment, including a construction trailer, just lying around the property. Not a good situation at all. Frankly, we have lost faith in Apex's ability or desire to help us, and now we have little faith that this Toll Brothers project will be any better. Does anyone at Apex care? Now I wish to share concerns I have with this proposal. On May 29th of this year, there was a mandatory neighborhood meeting to inform surrounding neighbors of this proposed development. Knowing the concerns of said neighbors, it was suggested several times by Apex Planning that Toll Brothers meet with the surrounding neighbors to hear and discuss their concerns. And while we finally met again to discuss our concerns, it felt initiated by us neighbors. This meeting occurred months later, just last week, Tuesday to be exact, a week before this planning board meeting and just about the time you received their proposal packet. Sort of last minute, don't you think? At this point, I don't even know if they have done anything to address our concerns. Maybe we'll hear something today, but at this point, I'm not sure they are doing anything but the minimum requirements of Apex. We submitted questions and concerns to Liz Lofton, I believe on June 23rd. She forwarded that list to Toll Brothers, Brendy Vega, on June 24th. On July 27th, a month later, I emailed Liz and told her we had not yet received a reply. She contacted Ms. Vega, who within the hour emailed us a reply. Somehow I don't think that 8-page response was done within the hour. Yes, those questions, concerns were answered, but not until contacted by Liz after I contacted her. Both the lack of initiating a meeting and the length of time to get a response to our questions has been very disappointing. On page 4 of the proposal, the PD plan proposes architectural standards that are exceptional and provide high quality. I personally do not think these customized elevations are exceptional. They look pretty much like so many other townhomes in Apex. Nothing exceptional about them. Again, disappointing. I would like to see privacy fencing between the backyards and the buffer area. This was mentioned at a meeting, but no commitment on the part of Toll Brothers. I am therefore mentioning this to you. Shouldn't a sewer capacity study be completed before possibly approving this project? No sewer, no development. At this time, Toll Brothers is planning at the lower entrance off Olive Chapel to be right in, right out. This will impact Ashley Downs traffic and additional traffic on Chapel Ridge Road for those unable to exit as they wish at that main entrance. A problem for existing homeowners and those purchasing in Chapel Ridge towns. Something to consider. In conclusion, I do not wish to see the townhomes built on these 21 acres, but if they are, I would like to see the exceptional Toll Brothers mentioned I would like to see the exceptional Toll Brothers has mentioned in their proposal. Thank you for your time.
Chair Marks and members of the Planning Board, thank you for this opportunity to present a view and our concerns to the board. My name is Paul Kane. I reside at 1401 Bourneside Lane and one of the properties considered in the Toll Brothers submission. Over the past 6 or 7 or 8 years, a number of changes have occurred to the neighborhood. Primarily the Olive Chapel Professional Park and the cut through of Chapel Ridge Drive into the townhome development of Hampstead. They've had a significant impact on our community. And whereas my wife and I stood along with other neighbors in resisting these changes, the decisions have been made to proceed anyhow. The result has really been a dramatic altering of the character of the neighborhood. And yet we are facing continuing change. One property in the neighborhood has been sold to a church and has now been annexed by Apex. The 2045 land use plan has been amended by the town to include apartments in a portion of Beaver Creek which borders the northern part of the community. And a petition has been submitted by Olive Chapel Professional Park, either has been submitted or will be submitted, to expand their uses. And finally, the property next to us has been sold to a developer. The qualities of the neighborhood that drew us to Chapel Ridge, my wife and I at Chapel Ridge, over 20 years ago, have dramatically changed and continue to erode. My wife and I are looking for a more stable current environment and future, and to protect the value of our property from potentially a decrease in value that could result from uncertainty involving all the town developments. We are not alone in this. Seven residents in the northern section of Chapel Hill are considering also looking at evaluating what they can do. So of the 21 homes that exist in Chapel Ridge, 12 owners have opted for a change. The density proposed by Toll Brothers is consistent with the Apex Plan, 2045 use plan as noted. It will help support the Apex Transit Plan and bus route plan for that area and the turnaround in all of Chapel Park. And will provide a consistent direction for development in that area rather than the piecemeal approach which has been occurring to date. Thank you for the opportunity to share my concerns. I ask for your support of this petition for Chapel Ridge Towns. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. Any other comments? All right, this time I'll close the public comment period and bring it back to the board for any discussion, possible motions.
I have a question. I think it's for Liz. I was surprised that there was no attendees to the neighborhood meeting, but then we heard Ms. Bria, is it Bria, said that there had been two neighborhood meetings. Okay.
There were two formal neighborhood meetings, and then they had informal meetings with the neighbors.
Okay. Are both neighborhood meeting notes in the staff report?
So, yes.
Okay, I must have missed the second one.
They missed notifying some of the people.
Yep.
That a second one
Oh.
attended that neighborhood meeting.
Yeah.
But then they also had an informal meeting with the neighbors last Tuesday.
Okay.
Excuse me, I don't think that's true. There was not two formal meetings at all. There was one informal, because everybody's right here, and we haven't attended any. I don't know where that comes from.
They missed people on their original neighborhood meeting, and they had to notify those neighbors.
Wrong. Even this last one person got an email, nobody else did. So we had to pass it around ourselves. You know, so please, there was not two formal meetings and one informal. Last week or the week before was the first time we got together with your group.
There was, at least in our packet, there was the meeting, and there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 people attended. They were from Olive Chapel Road, Chapel Ridge Road, Barnside Lane, Wild Sonnet, and Clark Farm Road all attended the March 29th meeting. But, I mean, back to your point, Mark, if there was, a bunch of information going back and forth and comments, we didn't see it. Now, obviously, we only have to see the public, but it'd be nice to have some of that information presented. And then, so Liz, you said there were people that weren't notified? Is that?
Originally.
Okay.
And they had a second one.
Okay, so the second one.
And that's included in your.
So the March one was the original one. That's the one that has a bunch of attendees.
Yes.
Got it.
That's one that we have the notes.
Yeah, I think it's more than 12, but yeah. Okay, and then the other one where it said no attendees, that was the second one?
It was sent to the people that were missed on the.
Got it, and they didn't come?
Correct.
Okay, but the people that are here,
We never
Boykin, who I read for, she got one, did we forget? We didn't get
Is it possible they're outside of the designated area of 300 feet? Or whatever the,
Yeah.
I mean, it could be that they just would never be notified anyways due to the town ordinance of having
300 feet?
300. Is it 300 feet?
Yep, 300 feet from the property.
So it could be that only the people that within 300 feet of the, would have been notified, and then it'd have to circulate from there.
Was there signage on the property? Okay. All right, thank you.
You know, I would implore everybody to look at traffic. Because you're dealing with two exits outside of the hill of Olive Chapel. Top of that hill is where the exit is for Olive Chapel Park. And that's a nightmare now because you can't get out without looking for have any lights, you have any. Now you're having two more on a hill coming up and down right across from an exit from Ashley Downs.
Okay.
So I don't know if anybody looked at that, but that's a real issue.
Thank you, sir.
Russell, do you want to talk about it? Is that why they did a right in, left out, right out?
Well, I mean, first of all, the development falls below our traffic impact analysis threshold in terms of traffic generation, so they're not required to do a TIA. But second of all, when they first came in, they showed access exclusively on Chapel Ridge Road, and we had some discussions about that after I reviewed it. They have since come back with a full movement access proposed on all of Chapel Road. So this development will have full movement out there via that existing two-way left turn lane. If no one from this development wants to travel on Chapel Ridge, they have that option. And certainly that helps take the traffic load off of Chapel Ridge Road. So.
What about, is it kind of a blind with a hill from a visibility perspective?
We evaluate for site distance, and NCDOT has to review access.
Okay.
In the event there is a problem, then certainly, we'd have to look at access restrictions, but it's lining up with an existing, the proposed access on all Chapel Road's lining up with an existing access at that point.
Okay.
I would look at that again, because you said the same thing on Kelly Road, until they had 12 accidents on that road, and they had to put in a white line.
Okay.
This is signalized access?
No traffic signals are proposed as part of this development. None are warranted.
Okay. Thank you.
After accident, you will have one in.
Any other questions for Russell?
No.
Thanks, Russell.
Thanks.
I guess would the applicant be opposed to settling that and adding that if need be? I mean, it is kind of a steep hill. I could see anybody who said it's only right out onto Olive Chapel, is that correct?
No.
Or that, so that one, you can go left, it's full access, yeah, so turning left, I could see those, because I could see the traffic coming out, turning right on Olive Chapel, and then turning right on to Kelly to get out to 64, if they're trying to go out, fastest way out, possibly. I don't see them traveling north through the neighborhood to go through Beaver Creek to gain access to the highway, so.
Only if they're shopping.
Only if they're shopping.
Or they could go down to the other full access at the bottom of the hill, or down the hill. And there's another one on Olive Chapel, right?
Richardson.
Well, on Olive Chapel.
Turn left, go down to Richardson.
Well, Ashley Downs has a full movement, right? Russell, is their full movement going to be opposite of the Ashley Downs full movement, or staggered?
Yeah, as you can see in the image, it lines up. It's maybe a little hard to see with the line types, but it's exactly lined up with the existing full movement access.
So that'll essentially be both neighborhoods coming out onto Olive Chapel.
Correct, yeah.
That might be a candidate for a light at some point.
No, that would not warrant a traffic signal.
Okay. Got it.
Interesting.
Good to know. Okay.
Any other comments or possible motion?
I have one quick question. If they do the sewer capacity study and it's required that at the Beaver Creek pump station and it's not enough where they just upgrade that pump station, is that the plan?
So the sewer study's actually come back now, and we've confirmed capacity.
Answers my question. Thank you.
Yep.
Easy enough.
So I think I'm gonna support this mostly because I've heard a lot of complaints about the professional park over the last several years. And I actually agree with Mr. Payne that I think this will create some stability and kind of a direction for this area. And I think it could improve this area as opposed to what the complaints about the professional park. I think the town will have to do their job and hold Toll Brothers accountable for doing a better job of construction. Hopefully, that will be on you, right? Your name's going to be on that contact list, right? Okay.
Thanks, Mark.
I think kind of echoing what Mr. Steele said, if you zoom out 10,000 feet out of this site, contextually this reads really well with the context of the public shopping center, the multifamily, the access to Beaver Creek Commons, the density up to the north, the future land use calling for multifamily, and I don't know if it's actually, was that voted on? Or did they took that out, didn't they? Well, there was talk of it anyway, so I was encouraged for a minute there because I think it was going to bring transit to that area, which is needed next to the employment center, but I think it reads pretty well. And just to echo what Mr. Barron said, Toll Brothers, I live up off Wimberley, which I believe, Toll Brothers has most developments up in that or in that vicinity, and they're all very well done and very expensive. But I think maybe this will add, future Apexians and affordable Toll Brothers product, relatively speaking. So I'll echo support for it.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion? We have support? Do we have a motion?
I'd like the motion for approval of rezoning on the conditions as by.
Okay, I have a motion from Keith.
I'll second.
I have a second from Reggie. Any other discussion before we vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. With that, we close the public comment area and we go to new business. Amanda with her huge list of UDOs.
Oh my God, I thought we were done.
Never done.
Are we never done?
Never done.
Is it like software? The more you change it, the more changes you have?
Yes.
It's a living, breathing document. There you go. Okay, so the first set of amendments is quite lengthy, but I can summarize most of the pages as there's a consistent theme through. So the proposal is to basically to revise the definition of a major site plan and the standards for approval, change the decision authority for major site plans from town council to the technical review committee, which is staff, change the decision authority for special use permits from town council to the board of adjustment, and change all development services supervisor references to development services manager. So that last one's just a title change for an existing position. But basically, the goal of these changes is to remove town council from the quasi-judicial process. As you know, town council hears legislative items. The public is used to being able to approach them to offer their opinions and
and talk with council members, which council members cannot do for quasi-judicial. Those are kind of like a court case, and you can't have communication before the public hearing. Board of Adjustment, on the other hand, is used to quasi-judicial because that's all they do with variances. So this would just be adding another quasi-judicial review type to the Board of Adjustment. So that's the moving the special use permits to Board of Adjustment. But let me just quickly go through. So the changes throughout the ordinance reference, updating the powers and duties of the town council, removing special use permits and major site plans, removing references to quasi-judicial text, adding special use permits to the Board of Adjustment, making sure that major site plan is properly referenced under technical review committee duties as review and approval authority, making the changes necessary in tables that summarize our notice requirements. Again, removing references to special use permits and major site plans from actions by town council. Our development review procedures, noting that in this summary table, noting the changes that I've mentioned just now in that table. In the special use permit section, changing all references to town council to Board of Adjustment, which in your staff report, I did miss one, and in doing this PowerPoint presentation, I caught it. So making sure I'll get all that cleaned up. That was in, I'll show you the one I missed, this one. So I will ensure that when town council see this, they have the corrected text. And that's again just changing town council to Board of Adjustment. And then for the changes to site plans, so and it's probably best just to start off with the definition of major site plan. So currently, most site plans are minor site plans until they reach a certain threshold. And currently that is greater than 100,000 square feet, more than 20 multifamily units, or it's one of these situations described in the 5 bullet points that are actually proposed to be struck, which is multiple site plans within a 3-year period that cumulatively reach that 100,000 square foot threshold, which is the typical. Site plans proposing 100 more additional parking spaces to existing development. Site plans proposing to grade more than 25 acres. Any buildings taller than 4 stories. And the mixing of architectural types, exotic architecture, or the use of non-standard materials, which is not typical. So the proposal is to simplify this and to qualify or classify that major site plans are simply plans that propose 100,000 square feet or more, or that are 300 multifamily units or more. And the reason for raising that multifamily threshold so far is pretty much anywhere you're going to have new apartment developments, that land has to be rezoned first. Town council, you and town council are going to get to review that, determine if the proposed density is compatible with the area, and if so, the rezoning gets approved. At this point, it doesn't need to rise to the level of major site plan threshold. Once you get over 300 apartment units, though, you get to a big enough complex that, perhaps that we feel like a neighborhood meeting is still warranted. So one thing that's not changing with the major site plan process is that a neighborhood meeting is still required. Similar to residential master subdivision plans. Used to be that they came to the planning board and town council for approval before, but then that was changed. It's now a staff level approval, but we left in the requirement for a neighborhood meeting. That way the adjacent property owners are informed, can share their concerns with the developer, perhaps, work out a possible change or, some improvement, and just more of a notification to adjacent property owners that something big is changing, something happening. So with major site plans, the process will be identical to minor site plans, with the one difference of it will require a neighborhood meeting before they submit the application. The process, the rest of these changes, just note that minor and major site plans pretty much follow the same process from once the plan's submitted, removing language about town council approval. And the standards for approval, Okay, so currently, major site plan has compatibility standard and impact on public facilities, which were the two discretionary standards that town council could use to approve or deny a major site plan. The proposal is to basically only follow the standards that currently apply to minor site plan. If it meets all the standards of the ordinance, then staff would approve the site plan. And the rest is just ensuring proper changes to titles and responsibilities. The position title changes as noted from development services supervisor to manager. There's changes just, throughout, making sure that things are consistent with minor and major site plan and the process of when things happen, the timing of when things happen, including Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission recommendation approval by town council. And so that's the summary of, there's a lot of changes in order to change the process for major site plan. Any questions on amendment number 1?
Any questions for Amanda? Okay.
Okay. Let me skip ahead several pages in my staff report here. Okay, so the next set of amendments is somewhat related to that one. So as we had discussions with the Planning Committee of Town Council and even a work session with Town Council on these changes, so they have been presented with these changes in the past couple of months. And so one of the things in looking at these changes is, well, let's reevaluate our use table and which uses are currently indicated as requiring special use permit approval. And should they still be special use permit approval? Should it be allowed by right? Should it be allowed by right only with maybe some changes to supplemental standards? Or should something that's currently shown as permitted become a special use? And so we reviewed the use table. This amendment has not been specifically reviewed by the Planning Committee or the Town Council in their work session. So the first amendment was, this one has not been reviewed by them at this point. And in your staff report, you can see we have basically, I'll go through the uses individually. For congregate living facility, it's currently allowed as a special use permit in most of our low and medium density residential zoning districts, which the form that this use typically takes, staff does not feel that that's really appropriate. We don't really get requests for this use in those districts. The density is fairly low in those districts anyway. And so staff is proposing to remove that use from rural residential, low density, medium density, high density, single family, and mixed office residential retail, which would leave the use in multifamily and the planned districts. Similarly, with nursing or convalescent facilities, more of an institutional type use and in form and function. And so proposing to strike that from the low and from most of the residential districts, but leave it in high density multifamily, which is where you could find apartment complexes. So similar form and scale massing of development. And it still remains in a few of the non-residential districts as well. For townhouse and townhouse detached, currently the townhouse is allowed as only as a special use in high density single family. The staff is proposing that if you're in high density single family, perhaps townhouse should be a permitted use. And the reason why you still see the /S to indicate a possible special use permit requirement is if the property is in the small town character district, which it's currently only allowed as a special use in small town character. So outside of the small town character area, we're proposing that townhouses be allowed by right in high density single family and remain as a special use in only in small town character. And then for townhouse detached, which is rare, I don't know that we've really seen many, if any, in Apex, just one.
Westford.
what's that? Yeah, a handful in Westford. So it's not common that we get townhouse detached, but allowing that, since it's a detached structure, allowing that by right in medium density as opposed by special use. And then in high density single family, treat it the same as townhouse, and similar in small town character, it'd be allowed with a special use permit as it currently is in small town character. So moving to our public and civic uses, we are proposing that church or place of worship only be allowed with a special use permit in RA and RR, which is our most low density rural zoning districts, given that the typical form is larger and than large lot single family would be. In this district, the reason why it's pretty much a permitted / special use in every zoning district, and we'll kind of get to this change in a minute, is there are certain uses that sometimes follow along with a church, such as a daycare, a school, or homeless shelter, that are only allowed with a special use permit. So that's why the P/S is there. So that would remain throughout, but we're just proposing to remove it as a use by right in RA, RR, and MORR. MORR is a mixed-use district that's primarily found in the small town character area, and so we feel like it needs to be project sensitive, context sensitive, whether that use is appropriate or not. And then for daycare facility, we are proposing to strike that as a special use in most of the single family, in all of the single family residential districts, leave it in high density multifamily, and leave it untouched in the remainder where it's allowed in the non-residential zoning districts.
So if somebody's out, has a bunch of land and they want to have 5 to 10 kids, they can't get a special permit?
So if you have, I think it's 6 or fewer or less than 6, the state exempts you. This doesn't fall. This is more of the larger daycare facilities and we typically hear the complaints of traffic at pickup and drop off times and other things, other concerns.
But no reason to take, we could still have a special permit and let's have it reviewed. We don't even want to give them that option.
So we just felt like in the most case, daycare facility is typically more of a commercial office type feel and type of use. And, whether it's necessarily appropriate in potentially adjacent to a neighborhood in a neighborhood area or not, I mean, yes, there is the option that town council could want to leave that open, but.
Just need to rezone. We need to rezone to O&I.
That would be the.
Daycare facility.
Okay.
That would be the alternative, and now with the recent change to state law, despite what the land use map says, if the rezoning is approved, the land use map is automatically updated. So that's not necessarily a hurdle. They could go through the rezoning process, which is essentially, it just gives town council approval authority versus special use permit giving Board of Adjustment approval authority.
Okay, thank you.
We're proposing to remove recycling collection stations from all of the residential zoning districts where it's currently allowed, and office and institutional, and removing it from TND, which is a mixed-use type plan unit development, and change it from a special use permit to permitted by right in Tech Flex, which is a more heavier commercial type zoning. For beach bingo, we're proposing to remove that from our downtown district, which is B2. And it would only be allowed as a special.
Beach bingo?
Yeah.
It's something that no one does anymore, but back in the day, before the lottery and lotto and scratchers, they used to have beach bingo. You couldn't win anything that was monetary, and the items that you could win had to be $10 or less. Some of the churches used to do it as fundraisers back in the day. We can't get rid of it, but nobody does.
Yeah.
It's a legacy term.
It's a legacy term.
Oh my God.
And I think that it was popular at the beach back, I mean, this is like 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, they still did it once in a while here in the early 2000s, but it
Okay.
doesn't need to be.
Thank you.
And it was allowed in B2 so they could have it at the community center because the campus is zone B2.
Okay.
But you can actually gamble now, so he does this.
Yes. For horse riding stable, we're proposing in PUD to change that from special use permit to permitted use by right, because again, if you're going through the PUD, you're going through the rezoning process, and whether that use is appropriate or not could be determined at the time of zoning. And I believe this is the last one, and we amended this use fairly recently, the medical or dental laboratory, upon a private request to allow that downtown under certain limited conditions, if it's not in the storefront location. And we just overlooked, why is it a special use permit in neighborhood business? And so the proposal was to change that to a permitted use in the neighborhood business, the B1 zoning district. So related to some of these changes, the definition for church or place of worship, we're basically leaving churches shall not include homeless shelters unless they are approved as a special use. So where churches are allowed, then the daycare facilities, preschools, and or schools would be allowed. And remember, we struck that use from the RA and RR. For a townhouse, we just added the condition such use shall require special use permit if located within the small town character overlay district. Similar for the townhouse detached. And then under supplemental standards for the church, actually Diane found a typo, church or place of worship. Prior to the establishment of a daycare facility, preschool, or school, a minor site plan shall be submitted and approved. So ensuring that that would not fall under an exempt site plan, that it goes through the full site plan review process and a TIA if warranted, if the number of students warrants the TIA. Any questions on number 2?
Quick, so there's a bunch of asterisks on some of the columns. What are those asterisks?
Yes, so let me go back. So one asterisk indicates that the use is allowed in the small town character only if also allowed in the underlying district. So that's an overlay over top of the base zoning. Okay. With the 2 asterisks are only found in the sustainable development district, which only applies to Viridia right now. Okay. And the 3 asterisks are only found in the B2 column, downtown business, which indicates that those uses are not allowed in storefront locations.
They have to be above.
Had to be above or internally located. Yeah.
All right. All right. Any questions for Amanda on these 2 amendments?
There's one more.
Oh, there's a third. This one? Lurking.
And there's more.
Lurking. Oh,
there.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is short.
Yes, relatively speaking. Okay, so this change is to the parking standards for and supplemental standards for auto repair uses. And so there's 3 proposed changes. One is recognize that we're missing the term square feet for all other uses here. So the changes are for automotive paint or body shop. It currently references Schedule B, which is based on vehicle service and manufacturing area. And we are proposing to reference Schedule C, which basically, to summarize this paragraph, gives the planning director the authority to set the minimum parking ratio based upon information provided by the applicant on their use. These are uses that one fixed ratio of parking requirements doesn't necessarily work for every user. Mm-hmm. And so in the case of an automotive paint or body shop, you have the big facilities like Caliber Collision that need as much parking as they can get. They have a lot of bays, a lot of technicians. They have cars that sit for a couple weeks, sometimes waiting on insurance to come through. And so, plus the need for employees and customer parking. And so we're finding in a couple of recent examples where based upon our minimums, the maximum doesn't get them anywhere close to what they need. And rather than try to make that work for every type of paint or body shop, we don't want to require too much for a small operation either. So we felt that it's better to leave that up to the planning director's discretion and based on the criteria in the UDO. And there are several uses that are currently use that standard. The other use that's proposed to change is repair and maintenance general. So this is your like Firestone or other typical oil change place or general automotive repair facility, which currently relies on Schedule B. But similarly, the square footage amounts just don't necessarily work out, and it's setting the minimums too low, where our maximums allowed would not allow them to reach what they need. And we analyzed some existing facilities that were built prior to our current parking schedule and found that generally the parking ratio of 1 per 300 square feet plus 2 per service bay would provide a sufficient amount of parking when you consider all the factors allowed in the UDO for parking standards. And again, this is based on recent examples of our parking schedule that was revised in 2018, not necessarily working out with real life example. And then finally, we are proposing that land clearing and inert debris landfills be allowed to have gravel parking except for their handicap accessible spaces. Those are typically just used for employees only. It's not like the public is coming like the convenience center, the landfill off of Old Smithfield Road. And back to the vehicle repair and storage. Automotive painter body shop shall comply with the following standards. It's already required to be conducted within an enclosed structure, but vehicle storage areas, which don't count toward their maximum parking, shall be screened from off-site view according to the standards found in another section of the UDO, which basically requires a fence or opaque fence or a chain link fence with evergreen shrubs planted around it. That is the end. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have on that one.
Questions for Amanda? Possible motion for all three amendments?
I'd be happy to make a motion for all
We
three
have a
amendments.
motion from Ryan to approve all three amendments. Do I have a second? I have a second from Reggie. Any comments, discussion? Vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
I think every time we do an UDO update, Liz should have to buy us drinks.
As a user of the first.
Or Amanda should have to buy us drinks. What do you think? Trip to the bar. A trip to the bar.
Good to me.
You guys want to leave?
Yeah.
I need a motion.
Motion to leave.
Keith?
Second.
Mark, second. All those in favor?
Yes.
Meeting's adjourned.
So,
Thank you.
You're getting really efficient.
Wields a handicap.
It took me 10 years to learn.
Oh, my God. Wow.
You guys were all nice to Reggie last month?
No, we were
they
mean
tried to
and rotten,
behave.
weren't we?
They tried to behave. Very light guy.
We only had to, only once did one of us have to say, would you like a motion on that?
Yeah.
Because he was calling the vote. It was pretty obvious it was going to be unanimous, so he was just trying to save us a few seconds there.
How's it going?
Right?
Trying to move forward.
Yeah.
Trying to move forward.
Keys. You forgot your
Ryan,
keys.
Ryan.
Not getting far.
Motivated right after that parking lot. Sir. Enjoy it, gentlemen.
Thanks, Ryan. Always appreciate your comments.
Mike, have a go.
Yep, see ya.
Ironic, wasn't it, that I would be here for this?
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't.
When Walden came up for development again?
No, so when,
I think it was meant to be.
when it was submitted, well, I guess it is that you're on board, but when it was submitted, I said, Mark's gonna vote for it. And you're like, really? And I said, yeah, because he made I listened to every point he made, why it shouldn't be a daycare. I said it's the exact, I mean, I figured
You're exactly right.
I knew you would. You're very consistent and ethical.
It's even the street lines.
I know.
Always so helpful.
Yeah.
I was kind of disappointed with some of the comments. And it's funny because I guess I didn't go survey the people over on County Yellow. But,
At the time of the plat, there will be a plat note.
Bonnie, these are all shut off.
Okay, thank you so much. So if I can remember the word.
So I already sent you guys made it easy for me, there weren't a lot of extra notes. It's done and it's sent, and you can just send it back
It could
anytime.
be that we require proof that, I think it was from navigation easement or AV.
We only have a few months left on
The
this
easement is
tour of duty
recorded.
here.
And then there'll be a note of the plat referencing too. So people are gonna have to look at their plat, you know. There's a certain point where we just can't ensure, you know, and that's why we try to be very careful with what zoning conditions are added and how it's added. So,
I just foresee when they start putting homes there.
Yeah.
The airport campus is for private.
Airport is there.
It was there before.
Yeah, no, it was fine, it was good.
Because
So,
that was-
yeah.
That's actually one of the first.
We'll be in good hands.
In this area.
Was that one before Cox?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yep. He's very fair and measured.
There's no motion.
Yeah, I'll make a note of that to see, because Shelley's reviewing that subdivision. So I'll check with her to see, you know, how that's, because I haven't looked at those.
They are, yeah, they started that again. It's, the Delta thing is really bad. I mean, because at first, if you had your vaccine, you didn't have to wear a mask, but now they all have to wear masks.
People that, I mean, I guess if you
Hopefully, in a couple
have
of
plane
months,
and
or a couple of
apartment
weeks.
there, you
I hope.
I'll get it back to you.
All right, take care.
necessarily buy one of them. But, you know, that's me.
We'll see. Yeah. let
Yes,
me know.
but thank you for asking that question. I'll make a note to follow up with Shelley to make sure that plat note and all that's being followed through with accordingly.
Very good. Thank you very much. I do appreciate it. Y'all have a fantastic evening. See y'all later.
Unless they turn off the live stream, I guess we don't.
There were issues with the sound at the beginning. I got an email from the public hearing, from someone saying it was garbled. They had said, I told, well, yeah, I emailed Ann Teams John, who Lanzer, who I knew was working tonight, or soon, because I saw him. And he said that they were having some issues. They switched and got it fixed. Then the guy knew about it was like, the link's not working. Pulled it up and it appeared to be working. So I emailed John again. I said, he says the link's not working. And John said, I confirmed it's live, it's working, there's no problem. And so I emailed the guy back and
Might be the guy's stuff.
it could have been.
I'm getting old, I cannot sell those chairs. Next time if there's this many people gone, I'm gonna sit up there. Oh,
Yeah.
I really am getting old, like, it hurts. I'm like, my knees, my hips, those chairs are the worst.
I know, after
Those chairs are terrible.
about toward the end of our 12 hours in the car yesterday, I told you, because I've been having sciatic issues on my left side. Like I've never had, I think it's come from having to put so much, I'm just out of whack a bit from limping and the crutches and all that for so long. That's the only thing I can explain that's caused it. I didn't have any problems once I got to the beach, of course.
Yeah.
And then it's
some of that I
sitting,
have to sit for long amounts of, like sitting bothers my knees and my hips the most. Standing up for long times bothers my lower back. Like that really.
yeah.
So I prefer to keep like up,
Keep
down,
moving,
walking,
yeah.
like I just want to keep. I don't want to be sitting for 2 hours in the same position.
Oh, yeah.